Dust swirled across the cracked pavement as the raised wooden stick cut through the hot afternoon air, and for a brief, terrible second it felt like the world itself had stopped breathing. The pregnant dog lay on her back, exhausted and trembling, her eyes wide with a silent plea that no one seemed to hear. Every shadow stretched long across the empty street, and the moment hung heavy with fear, as if something irreversible was about to happen. Far down the road, unseen and unheard by most, a trained K9 lifted its head, ears twitching at a distant cry that carried more desperation than sound. Before the story begins, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you believe in kindness, compassion, and second chances, because stories like this remind us that even in the darkest moments, someone is always listening. The neighborhood looked ordinary at first glance, a row of modest homes baking under clear daylight, fences humming quietly in the heat. Yet beneath that stillness lived tension and unspoken struggles. The woman in the red dress moved with anger carved into every step, her face tight with frustration shaped by years of disappointment and loneliness. She saw the dog not as a living soul but as a burden that had wandered too close to her carefully controlled world. The dog, heavy with unborn puppies, had been searching for shade and safety, guided by instinct more than direction, until she collapsed in the middle of the road. Miles away earlier that morning, a Navy SEAL named Daniel had been running drills with his loyal German Shepherd, Rex. Years of service had taught Daniel to read silence the way others read words, and Rex had learned to respond not only to commands but to emotion itself. Their bond was built through long missions and quiet nights where trust meant survival. When Rex suddenly froze during training, ears pricked and body tense, Daniel felt that familiar pull of urgency. The dog's posture told him something was wrong, something beyond ordinary distraction, and together they moved toward the sound that only Rex seemed able to track. Back on the street, the pregnant dog struggled to rise but could not. Dust clung to her fur, and her breathing came in shallow bursts. The woman's raised arm trembled, caught between anger and uncertainty, as though part of her knew she stood at the edge of a decision that could never be undone. Neighbors watched from behind curtains, hesitant and unsure, their silence creating a space where cruelty could grow unchecked. The sky above remained painfully bright, offering no shadows to hide in, only the stark clarity of a moment that demanded change. Daniel and Rex arrived just as the tension reached its peak. The soldier's presence was calm yet commanding, shaped by discipline rather than force. Rex moved first, positioning himself between the woman and the helpless animal, not with aggression but with steady determination. The air shifted. What had been a scene of fear slowly transformed into one of awareness. Daniel's steady posture reflected years of protecting those who could not protect themselves, and even without spoken words, his intent was clear. The woman's raised arm faltered, lowered not by threat but by the sudden realization that she was being seen fully for the first time. As the dust settled, Daniel assessed the situation with quiet focus. The dog's condition was fragile, and Rex remained beside her, offering warmth and reassurance in the only way he knew how. The moment revealed something deeper than a simple rescue, it exposed the invisible wounds carried by everyone present. The woman's anger softened into confusion, and the onlookers stepped closer, their earlier hesitation replaced by curiosity and concern. Change rarely arrives loudly. Sometimes it enters through the steady presence of someone who refuses to look away. Daniel carefully lifted the exhausted dog, feeling the faint movement of life within her. Each step toward safety felt heavier than the last, not because of the weight in his arms but because of the realization of how close the world had come to losing something innocent. Rex walked at his side, alert and protective, as if guarding not just the dog but the fragile hope growing in that moment. The neighborhood watched as the soldier carried compassion through a place that had nearly forgotten it. Days passed, and the story spread quietly through the community. The pregnant dog, now named Hope by a local volunteer, began to recover under gentle care. Her eyes, once clouded with fear, softened with trust whenever Rex visited. Daniel returned often, not as a hero seeking recognition but as someone who understood that healing required patience. Even the woman in the red dress began to change, her sharp edges worn down by guilt and reflection. She started leaving bowls of water outside her home, small gestures that hinted at a heart learning to open again. The birth of the puppies came on a quiet morning filled with soft sunlight. Each tiny life felt like a promise that pain did not have to define the future. Daniel stood nearby with Rex, watching silently as Hope cared for her newborns. The transformation was undeniable. What began as a moment of despair had grown into something powerful enough to inspire an entire street. Neighbors who once stayed hidden began working together, building a small shelter and offering support to animals that wandered through their area. Yet the greatest change was not in the neighborhood itself but in the people within it. The woman who once raised her hand in anger now knelt beside Hope with gentle hands, learning to replace frustration with compassion. Daniel knew that redemption was not a single act but a series of small choices made every day. Rex remained the quiet bridge between worlds, reminding everyone that loyalty and empathy could cross even the deepest divides. If this story has touched your heart so far, stay with us until the end and let it remind you that even the smallest act of courage can rewrite someone's future. The camera would slowly pan across the peaceful street, showing Hope resting with her puppies, Rex lying nearby like a silent guardian, and Daniel watching from a distance with quiet pride. The air felt lighter, as if the neighborhood itself had taken a deep breath after years of holding it in. Before the ending, here's a special request: write in the comments one word that represents hope to you, because your voice helps keep stories like this alive and meaningful. The story closes not with grand celebration but with quiet understanding. Hope's puppies grew stronger each day, chasing sunlight across the yard, unaware of how close their lives had come to never beginning. The woman in the red dress found peace in helping others, her past actions becoming a lesson rather than a sentence. Daniel and Rex continued their work, moving on to new missions while leaving behind a reminder that kindness is not weakness but strength in its purest form. As the sun dipped below the rooftops, the once empty street felt alive with connection, proving that sometimes a single cry for help can ripple outward and change more lives than anyone ever imagined. And if this story moved you, please take a moment to like, comment, and share your thoughts below, because your engagement helps spread messages of compassion to people who may need them most. Stories like this live on through the hearts of those who listen, reminding us that even in a world filled with noise, someone is always ready to hear a call for help and answer it with courage.